Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As always, we'll just give everyone a few minutes here to filter in. And then if you have any questions, you can toss them into either the chat or the Q&A session. Q&A area, whatever, and or use the raise hand feature in the webinar, at which point, excuse me, goodness, it's been a long day. Sabrina will unmute you and you get the chance to ask your question and we can workshop a solution or do whatever it is we need to do for that question. So we'll just give everyone just a few minutes here. And Sabrina, who's that question from?
Carrie.
Okay. All right, so, all right, Carrie, your question is that you had some XML data structures that didn't import correctly from POC to the test environment. Can you help me understand what you mean by didn't import correctly?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we had a POC on a different server, and I wanted to bring that into our test environment to learn from and see if I could get it working in our test environment. So I have 12 errors, and I noticed that some of those were coming from the XML data structures. They were different. They were different in the two environments, so I wasn't sure if maybe when I exported from the POC environment that I didn't make a selection correctly. Maybe I forgot something, or if these structures have to be rebuilt once you're in the new environment.
You definitely can export XML structures. In fact, you wouldn't. That would be how you should do it, right? Like, yeah, now you could confirm if they're part of your project or not. Unfortunately, we can't get you to share your screen on these things, but like, do you still have access to the POC environment?
I do, yes.
One of the things you could do is in the Designer Studio, you could go find that XML structure as well as any of the data types it created and see on the right-hand side in the Designer folder if you see the project name that you exported. So normally when you export an entire project. And so there should be a column in the default Designer folder report called project name.
Okay, so I'm in, you want me to be in the POC environment?
Wherever they were originally created at, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm there now, and I'm in that structure under system, designers, data structures, XML data structures, and I clicked on like the first one, and on the right-hand side I see the name, properties, obviously some things you can do to manage or edit them. Is that where you want me to look?
Well, you should be able to be just in a regular Designer folder. We do register them there, but are they in is your XML data type in a regular Designer folder? I'm gonna get a sample XML and create an XML data type really quick. Here we go, XML examples, XML food menu. Okay, here we go. So just gonna let me go create some space to work in here.
Yeah, I'm going through the folders to find them again. Man, thanks for having me to the lunch. What do they call this again?
Yeah, lunch and learn is what we're calling
it. Lunch and learn, yeah.
Happy. All right, here's me creating a type from XML. So here's my sample XML. Call this XML test 1. Create. So you should, when you find this thing, now you should be able to use search and find it and right click and go to manage open containing folder if you can search for one of the names of these things.
Okay. Let me try searching. Okay. Manage open containing folder. Okay, I see the one of the ones. You want me to click on that?
Well, on the right-hand side, if you look on my screen, is there a project associated with that?
Let's see. Oh, I see what you're looking at. Okay, hold on, let me check.
Because if there's no project, it would not have been exported.
Yeah, the project is called MediaCom.
Okay, wonderful. So that likely means that they got exported. So do you don't see these things? They don't exist on the other server at all, or is it there's just errors?
The structure itself seems to, but the once you're in that system under the XML data under the system, it's not the same.
But that should be okay. You shouldn't really ever need to go in here looking for, or were you like under data structures, XML data types or something?
Yeah, they were different. I'm not trying to go through the errors.
Can you give me an idea of what one of the errors is? Can you just maybe read it off or?
Yep. And I did find the XML data structure in the test environment. It is to the project MediaCom, so that's good.
Okay, that means it came over. It could. This might just require like a recompilation. One of the things you could quickly check is if you have any data structures that need to be recompiled. And what you can do is go to a designer folder, any designer folder, right click, go to the other category, and then there's a recompiled data structures action.
Okay.
If you select that, it'll either show you a list of things needing to be recompiled or that all data structures are up to date.
All right, that one said up to date.
Okay.
And let me try this one here.
And that recompile data type action is sort of at the application level, so it checks all data types. It's not type by type.
Okay, so it said they're all up to date as well.
So then, what kind of error are you getting? Sabrina, while I'm asking this question, do you think you could confirm if we can allow files to be uploaded into the chat on our webinar? I know you can do that in regular Zoom. That might be helpful just to see a screenshot or something while we figure out if we're gonna move to a regular Zoom meeting to allow multiple screen share.
Sure, I'll look into that.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
I'm typing in, so that's
one of the type names?
That's one of the ones it's complaining about, yeah. So it's breaking validation issue 1. Could not find type. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I have, for various flows, I have 5 of these type of errors.
Okay, let me see if I can't get one of my guys. This is probably something that is going to be easier done on a normal screen share. Do you have a support ticket open for this one?
No, I didn't. I was going through with Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to secure, I guess, some support time with somebody on your guys' team, but it just didn't happen yet. So he recommended I come to the luncheon to see if we could hash it out here.
Yeah, obviously there's a type missing. I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, can you search for customer order details, all one string, in the test environment and see if it exists? Just in the normal portal search in the top left-hand corner? This would be a lot easier with a screen share, fortunately.
Yeah, so I have a folder, I have the XML data structure, and then I see a bunch of native data types.
Mm-hmm. Oops, because if I look at mine and I look at XML test, like I should be able to search for a type here. Maybe breakfast. Does breakfast come back with anything? Yeah, breakfast menu brings native data type. What's missing is confusing to me. I'm not sure.
So I do have a bunch of native data types for customer order details.
Mm-hmm. But the type, is it possible that, I think one last check here, and what I'd like to do is I'm going to get, I'm going to ask someone to submit a support ticket on your behalf, and we'll reach out here after the call just to do a quick screen share. This is, but I'd just see if you can't, if you look at the validation on the left-hand corner where you see that, there's like a see all link that'll take you into the system validation report.
Let's see. Which one did you click on there?
If you're in the normal studio,
you click the issue, right?
You click the issue. There's a link in the top right-hand corner called see all.
All right, I have a open a new window. There you go. Now I have them all.
Yeah. Do you see, like, are there any right-click actions on one of those validations?
Let's see. Yeah, I can clear issues, compare flow versions, show preview, a bunch of different things. Edit flow, run flow.
Can you edit the flow and see if you have any validations, which would be like the red exclamation points in the flow?
Yep.
And does one of the validations say type missing?
Let's see. So
like on the
flow.
Yeah, if you look, if you're in a flow, bottom left-hand corner, you'll get a list there.
I see a type not found. I see could not find type. That's a breaking issue.
Clearly the type is missing. So something's gone wrong here, but the types aren't recompiled. One last check here.
Sure, yeah, I think, because it was the first time I ever played around with importing, exporting, and importing, so I'm sure I screwed something up in the process that is causing this.
Well, let's try one more thing. Can you find your XML data structure? The one, and there should be a right-click regenerate action. Can you try that and see if that has any behavior change? You might
regenerate.
What's that?
Yeah, I was checking out the regenerate earlier. I thought that could.
Oh, you already tried that without success?
Yeah. So I did regenerate just now. Should the errors go away potentially if it worked?
Yeah, I wouldn't trust the system validations to refresh immediately, but what I would do is go back in to that flow you were just looking at and see if those validations are changed at all.
Okay. Do I need to close out of the flow?
You need to exit and come back in. Yep, exactly.
Exit, okay. Actually, I see, so for the first 5 issues, it says import issue. So that was kind of what I'm talking about. I think that was...
Usually it means like a missing dependency or something. We just need to get something off the other server.
Yeah, so I was wondering if it didn't fix any of the issues in that flow. So I was wondering if should I completely remove the projects that I imported?
No, I think
and re-import them. Or?
No, I think what I'd like to do is ask, and Sabrina, if you could help me with this, since it's just us on today, if we could submit a ticket on Carrie's behalf into support, and if we could ask Brian to get one of the tier 2 guys to look at that ticket. I'm sure it's probably something really quick we can sort out really quick once we can get on a screen share.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, this makes it a little
piece of information.
Yeah, likely it's something very simple, just very difficult to sort of do that troubleshooting without being able to see. So Sabrina will do that for us, and then what I'd like to do is then work on that on a support thread.
Okay, cool.
Since this is a more complicated one, apologies we couldn't get to that one. That one will probably be pretty straightforward for us to sort out from a normal screen share. So I'd expect someone to follow up on that really shortly here for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Any design type questions or anything else I can help you out with while we're here?
Not at the moment. I'm sure once we get through this and I start working on getting it running in test, I'm sure I'll have plenty more questions.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thanks for your questions, and we'll follow up here shortly. Probably it could very well be me. So.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and I'll catch up with you guys soon.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. All right, and let's look at. All right, Alex, what do you got for us today, sir?
I'm just a pretty simple thing. I think I just can't Basically, I have a form with, let's say, 3 optional text boxes on it.
Okay.
And I want to run a validation flow that that can return errors on all 3 of them based on some kind of input criteria. So, you know, it's I have it, you know, quite like basically, I think I'm returning a form validation issues data type.
Okay.
And if it's based on one condition, you know, the form validation issues type allows you to like keep adding as many kind of errors as you want, you know. But if I want to add, keep kind of augmenting the list of validation issues, you know, based on different criteria coming into the validation flow, I'm just not sure how I add to that list rather than, you know, kind of configure it, you know, as a single kind of thing. Do you follow me?
I think so. Let me go ahead and get the workspace up really quick. So you're using a validation issue flow specifically.
Yeah. So I've got I've got a form, and you know, I go to validation. I'm in 6, so using a validation flow to validate you know, some stuff on a form based on, you know, checkboxes being selected or something like that.
Right.
And so as I say, I could probably build 3 separate, I'm basically tracking 3 text boxes, but it could be 2, any number greater than 1. And basically I could write a validation flow for each one of them.
Right.
I'm wondering if there's some way I can augment the validation return type to include both errors based on different conditions, kind of thing.
Okay, let's see here. Just get myself set up here. Text box 1, text box 2. And then we'll come and create a validation rule, add new. We will build a flow. This will be validation flow 1, create validation flow 1, create. It's been a while since I put one of these together, so I'm gonna bumble through this a bit. All right. So here we're gonna take in text box 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then on create data, it should be like issues list, and this will be validation something. Is it validation issues?
It's form validation. Form validation issues.
Form validation issues. Form validation issues. This is .form. Oh, exactly the same. Issue and issues. Okay.
Yeah, so if you look at the end step, it automatically generates a type of
validation issues, plural.
Validation issues, yeah.
So validation issues. Okay. On my other screen, I'm gonna have to get this doc up really quick so I know how to do this. It's been a while. Validating form data with a flow.
Yeah, so basically what I'm doing is I've got like a is empty step. And so I say if text box is empty, then, you know, throw an error.
Okay.
And then I keep going and I say if text box 2 is empty, throw another error. And you know, I want the output to be the sum of the 2 errors. And as I say, if I in that create data stuff that you're using right now, like I can add any number, I could add any number, but how I kind of put them together into one that comes out the end step is the thing that's kind of confusing me.
I see. All right, so we have an object called issues list, and inside of that we have a validation issue. So what I think here is something like this. I'm going to, let me move this around. So I'm going to create my issue object. And then if it's empty, I'm going to go to an add item step. So add item to list. It'll go here. And then this list type will be validation issue, singular, validation issue. That's not the right one. Form validation issue singular. A new item will be build data. Original list would be select from flow, issues list, validation issues. And here I'll do a change value on the output of the same thing. Issues list, validation issues. And then what I could say here is I'll check to see if text box 1 is empty. I'm going to copy both of these. I don't want to group them. I'll just copy them separately. Copy, paste. Copy, paste. So if it's false, it comes here. If it's done, it comes here also, though. Create like a little bit of a, almost like a waterfall type, or like almost like a, what I think of as kind of like a case statement.
Yep.
And this will be down here. Clean that up a little bit. And this will also come down here. All right, and then those are set. So change this to be text box 2. And then add item to list step is going to be details. Is it details or message maybe? Text box 1 empty.
You basically have to fill out the break level, the message, and the data name.
So we'll say fatal, message, and data name is going to be the actual component name, isn't it?
Yeah, your text box 2 thing.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to replace this one then, since this one has some more. And this message will now be text box 2 is empty. So let me save this, come back to my flow, my form, set my text boxes to have unique data. Is it data names or control name that it's after?
Data name.
Is it data name? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my, I need to map my text inputs to my rule here. Run on value changed. And can we say run rule on form show? All right, save this, come back into my validation rule. Burning through this just so I can get something to talk through here. And then if it's data name, it would be text box 1, text box 2. And then I need to pass my form validation issues, which I declare my create data step out. So declare my form validation issue, check to see some property, add an issue item, check another property, add an issue item. So if I'm right, we should be able to do this in as many times as we need to, given the number of controls.
Okay, and the create data that you do at the beginning, that's issues.
Issues, plural, yep, exactly. Because it has the issue list inside of it. So I'll leave those alone. Let me debug this now. Okay, what's wrong with my flow? Validation issues is empty, add item, add item. So did we pass out? It is a, okay, so there's an empty, let me change that 1 second. I'm gonna duplicate my tab. I don't wanna have to go through my form. So here, I'm going to not do that array. Let's save this. Debug this. Okay. So my validation flow ran, or it's running differently. If I look at the output data, reference property text box is breaking issue. It didn't take my change. So is breaking issue will need to be true, I'm guessing. So I don't know why break level is considered different. Is breaking issue true? Let's save that. Start a new session. Okay. This is where I want someone else's help who knows these more. Input data here. 2 breaking issues. Reference property reason. So maybe it's because I don't have it associated. Let me see here. See what this says really quick. Run a value change, checkbox, blah, blah, blah. Form validation issue, validation. Break level fatal, data name, check. Okay, check is the data name. Why is this not working? It's running and it's returning me a is breaking issue true. Flow, custom validation flow, and rule input is check. Trigger on value, run rule and outcomes. Check, debug. And I can submit that. Okay, interesting. Something's wrong here. What's up? Let's look at this setting. So validation rule edit. So I'm gonna, that's my triggers, but not what I'm applying it to. Run rule on all outcomes.
What you're applying it to is what you're filling in the actual form validation data type.
So I'm missing a configuration here. What's wrong with this? Turn that off. I know my flow is running. It's getting data. There's nothing else to set here. Okay. Let me look at this. Maybe there's an issue here. Maybe I have it spelled wrong. Text box.
If it's case
text
sensitive,
box.
you might.
Yeah, I think that might be our problem here. So let's look at data name, text box lowercase, checks, but that needs to be text box 2. Are you getting it to work at all, or is it just not in the way you expect it to?
Yeah. So well, I can get it to work for kind of for one. Like if I just basically, or actually I can.
There we go.
Okay. So it's just like a case sensitivity thing?
Yeah, it's case sensitive on the data name. That was our problem. Okay. So yeah, so all I'm doing is, if we walk back through this, and I'm happy for everyone else to walk back through this in more detail, but declare your empty list, declare your single object on create data. That's what you pass out your end step. Now, if you look inside of this object, it's an issue list object. Well, that's what I called it, right? And inside of it is an array of validation issues. So what I need to do is add individual items to that validation issue list. And I do that using my add item to list step. And if I come and look at this, so declare an empty object here. And I don't even need to build data. I could just say constant and leave this alone, right? And then I add item to list. So I'm adding an individual form validation issue. I set it up. This is, or you have all this new item stuff, but then the original list is the item I declare on my create data step. It's issues list property. And then I do change value on that list. So add an item to the issues list validation issues, and then update the issues list validation issues list to be whatever it was before and after it moves through this step. And I do the same exact thing again. So each time it moves through one of these, it puts a new item in the list property of the issues list object I declare here, and then I pass the whole issues list object out.
Okay.
And that's how you'll get what you're after.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Glad I could help with one. I've been getting a bunch of questions I can't answer recently, so it's good to win one again.
Okay, great. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome, Alex. Happy to help. Anybody else got what other questions do we have? All right, so Chris's question, start linked flow async. With both work queue options unchecked, use work queue or manage execution threads. How many threads and servers would be used to process the started flow by default in a multi-node environment? Quite a question, sir. Let me get a flow here.
And it fit in my small mouth too. I don't understand.
Yeah, this is a good question. I'm especially grateful we have one of our doc teams members on to get this information memorialized for all time. So async in a cluster question. I doubt the answer to this is going to delight you, but we can absolutely talk about the details here. So let me get a flow with an async subflow. So for those of you that don't know, you can run flows on the back end, on the background, or like background thread by using a flow, start linked flow async. It's a special subflow type. And it can let you pass work off from the main execution thread into the backend thread and be processed whenever it gets to it. It's not, and so if you, a lot of times you might have like a scheduled job or an API call that needs to fire off something that takes a long time to run. And you can use this pattern where you have a normal flow calling an async flow to be able to do that type of pattern. Chris's question are specific to these two properties, use work queue or manage execution threads. So what we would do here is I'll just create a simple flow. Let's assume there's some sort of like big sort of process, you know, like I'll put a for loop. I need to loop like 1,000,000 times, right? I'm not actually gonna do that, but you know, create data step or something silly. I need to loop through a big Excel file and take all of its data into a database. I don't want the user session to actually incur that cost. Just put like a 10,000 here. I don't want the user session to incur that cost. So what I can do is leverage this async behavior to push that work into the background. Now, so Chris, to start answering your question then, which is, if you do not specify work queues or manage execution threads, all of the work put on the background thread works single threaded. And what it does is, if I come and look, when I run that flow, it is going to put itself, if I look at the system administration, system tools, event viewer folder, thread jobs, it's going to deposit itself into the default queue. In fact, I've got a bunch of stuff in the default queue. Interestingly enough, I don't know why. Some odd thing I must have built that's doing something silly. But it'll deposit itself into the default queue. Now the default queue is worked single threaded. And so that job will be put at the end of the queue and it'll work when it gets done. The thing to note to one of your questions is, in a multi-node environment, the thread jobs are completely discrete. They are not shared across the cluster. So an async flow started on one server, stays on and is executed on that one server. It is not passed across the node to other servers in any way. You know, and it's very much treated like just an API, a normal API call in. Let's say you make a call into a decision server with some data to get a response. That is completely handled by that server. It is not passed off or coordinated in any sophisticated way to have the cluster work all that work together. The load balancer directs the work, and the server just serves up whatever it's been asked to serve, even with background threads here. Each server has its own background thread pool, its own thread job queue, and it works those as quickly as it's able to, given whatever work has been deposited into that queue.
Okay. Then the follow-up question would be, there is that background queue on each server, and somehow yours has things in there that surprised you. It would be normal then that the thing that would throw into this background queue by default would be something small, something quick, right?
Sure.
Or let me say it this way, there are sort of two classes of things that might throw into a background work, which is kind of what prompted this question. One would be a very large list of very tiny things.
Sure.
And the reason why I'm putting them in the background, why I'm queuing them off this way, is because I don't want the user to sit through the entire list of it all. Just queue them all out and get going then. The other concern is sometimes there is actually a single flow that's going to grind, as you say, maybe grind through a large Excel file and copying things in. That one's going to take a while. Yep. No reason for the user to sit and wait on that either.
Yep.
Now, if I have a queue that I'm using for just one type or just the other type, doesn't strike me as, anything I would lose sleep over. But if I start mixing those two, I begin to wonder, am I doing myself a disservice there, or is there a pattern I should consider adopting where maybe one type I should actually use some of these features to manage them more effectively?
Yeah, so you can't, the thing about our queues and threads is you can't control the threading of a queue. So what managed execution threads is meant to allow you to do is to leverage the fact that you can, if you need parallel execution behavior, you can spin up queues, multiple queues, right? So that means, like, say I'm like, hey, this is high throughput. I want to be able to process 5 of these at a time. Well, I can't say, here's a queue, and then here's 5 threads for that queue. What decisions can do though is say, here's 5 queues, and each of which is single threaded. Therefore, I can effectively create parallel processing behavior. So to your question, which is, I have a mix of fast and slow background processes, and I want to bucket those appropriately, so a fast process doesn't sit behind a slow process, right? And what I would say is using managed execution threads is probably the best option here. And you would create a thread. You could say, like, I would just say slow boys, right? And then I could run this. Oh, it always defaults to 5. Well, that's fine. That's dumb, but that's fine.
As soon as you clicked off, it went back to 1.
I know, that's stupid. But anyways, it wouldn't matter if it's just empty queues there. But so what I can do here is have, I'll get a queue created. So if I come back and I look at my thread jobs and I collapse my list here, I see the queues here. I would have a slow boys queue. And that means I can use this pattern to put all of my slow processes into slow boys, or I could have, fast boys or something similar, right? And then I would see those 2 queues. They would have this format where it would be like slow boys -0 or -1 or -2 or -3 equal to the number of thread count here, which apparently is minimum 5 for some reason. I'll look at that offline. You should be able to not have it default itself to 5. I bet it actually accepts higher numbers. Yeah, it just won't go below 5, which is kind of, oh, no, okay. This is strange. Okay, it won't accept 1, but there you go, two slow boys. And so I can actually make this flow take a second, and I can show you what it'll look like. Let me just put a pause step in here. Now, please, anyone that's watching me use a pause step, don't use these.
You want to change your for loop count as well, or?
No, it's okay. It's just a single thread. I can restart my service if I need to. It should just be 1 flow running on this 1 thread. You're probably right. Why not? I'll do 100 of these. It's going to be a 5-second pause for 100 iterations. So if I then say, I'm not going to debug, it actually doesn't matter if I debug it. I can debug this. I've now run my flow, pass that work off. So if I come back and refresh my view here, I should see my queue, which I don't see. Hang tight. Let me see here. What's wrong with this? Let's try this again. That's got to be the pause step I'm running right there. But why is it not in my queue? Okay, let's try this then. Let me loop out here just a moment. And let's run this. Now, my job count's 104. It should be much higher now. Yeah, 1064. Everything's now in the default queue. But I'm not getting, where's my queue at? My execution threads is not working correctly. What's wrong with this thing? Is there something about not being able to change the name that's behaving weird? I was doing so good on this one. I actually understand how this process works really well. Well, at least I think I do.
Does it really want a dash at the end of the name?
I don't know. I'm just guessing. So we'll see. All right, here we go. Let's just leave it everything default. And then we will debug this and see if there's a change. No. Okay. Well, everything is definitely in the default queue right now. Interesting. It's not respecting my execution thread selection for some reason. Let's try worker queue. Let's try use work queue. I can't specify new queue. Is this broken in the current version? I've seen this work. What you should see is a set of unique queue names here.
I think for the other option, you have to actually go define a queue.
You do. Yeah, you do.
To
Absolutely.
Receive what you're doing.
And so you have to have the enterprise module installed. Yeah.
Okay, so that is, I don't think we have the enterprise module
You
installed,
do.
but it does.
Oh, well, you could at least. You have access to it.
I think you're right. I'm sure you're right that we have access to it. It's just that we haven't really, configured that, done that work.
I'm gonna restart really quickly and just see if there's any behavior change. I think this is some issue for me to follow up on. I think hopefully you understand what I'm saying though. Like where you see default queue, you should see slow boys or worker queue, and that means leveraging execution threads. You can put that. You can create a queue that gets worked so that and you can do this for scheduled jobs too. Well, there's an option fairly recently in the last, say, 10 versions of 6 that allows you to run a scheduled job in a custom queue, because some scheduled jobs do take a long time and scheduled jobs operate in the same single threaded way. So they allow you to control that. If this doesn't work, I'll graciously ask to move on from this question and follow up with you, Chris. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing what I'm expecting to see.
So I'll be watching the release notes, but I think the takeaway from that is either the slow boy should go to a special queue or the fast ones. And do you have any insight as to what's the better way to go with that?
Yeah, I think putting them into a fast queue and a slow queue makes a lot of sense. If you can determine ahead of time that it's going to be one or the other. So
you would actually recommend that both of these would potentially stay out of the default, one for fast, one for slow.
Oh, then if it's no, you could. I see what you're asking. No, you could keep the regular stuff in the default queue. There's no downside to that.
To putting all putting all what I'll call the fast things in the default is fine. It's maybe when you get to something slow, you would really rather carve that off someplace else so that it doesn't block up the default one.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, moving anything that you expect to be slow that's running on the back end into a separate queue is going to be a great best practice to follow. Though I'm failing to demonstrate that in practice.
So I think the important thing that I want to know is before we get carried away with these async processing, that we don't do something destructive like put really slow things into the default queue.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I really wanted to know.
Yep, exactly right. You're 100% on that.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to help clarify there. Attempt to, at least. All right. So here we go. Alex, our other Alex here. Question about data repeater. So Sabrina, if you can post this in chat, I'll just read it out. I'd like to have a data repeater in a form for line items that have many fields. Currently, when I press the add data record, I generate a line with a button in it that I need to click to then run a sub-dialog flow that in turn opens the form to capture the line item info. I'd like to open the subform directly when clicking the Add Data Record button once it's saved to have some of the captured fields shown in the data repeater zone in the main form. How do I open the, question 1 is how do I open the subform from the Add Data Repeater button? And how do I return the values captured to the main form? So you're going to do this by not using the Add Row or Add New Item button at all, and replacing that with a sub-dialog flow button. So I think I have 14 minutes. I think I can get here. So let's say data repeater question. It's going to take me a second to get set up just like it did the other day. So I'm going to create my data repeater. I'm just going to select type account for my data repeater to make it easy. So there's account. Format this a little bit, drop a label in, which will just be my email address. So text from data name, pick from data, form data, email address. Okay, save this. Back into my designer folder, create my main flow. And I'll drop in a form, which will hold my, actually, let me do this first. Drop in a fetch entities step. My fetch entities will fetch accounts. Okay, and then I will create my form. So let me edit this grid really quickly. One column, and I'll leave one row with for my I guess I'll do 2 columns and 2 rows. Okay. Come to my user control, find my data repeater. Now you're using data repeater add, which is our default one, but you need more complex behavior. So what I'm going to do is come to actions, sub-dialog button, and I'll just name this thing add new item or whatever we default that thing to. I'm going to select my data repeater here, which is user control repeater 1. Call this accounts list. Okay, there's accounts list, and I will add a button. Okay, look at this. It is set to required. Okay, now let me save this, and now I'll build my sub-dialog flow. I will create this thing, which will be add new account, something like that. All right, now in this flow, doesn't need any input data, but I need a form. So I'll say show form, and I'll create a form here, which will be my add new account form. All right, and on this, I'm just gonna put a label here, which is new email, and a text box that says new email address, and a button. And that's all I'm gonna put on this really dumb form here. All right, and then I'm gonna go to change data. And so here's where it's gonna start to change from some of the stuff we've worked on before, Alex. I'm gonna declare on my output data a object called new account of type account. This is a place where I'd love to have Corey's help. Make sure I don't get this wrong. And then what I'm gonna do, now you're probably not gonna do it on the end step, but I'm gonna use build data. I'm gonna build up a new account object. And on this object, I'm just gonna find the email address property. And then I'm gonna map in the value of my text box on my form, new email address. So when I run this, I should get an account back. Now, do I need an account list? I might, this actually, oh, do I need, okay, hold on, sorry. I need to pass in the whole list first. So this is current account list, which is gonna be type account. Is list. And then I can't do this. I'm gonna add an item. So I'm gonna pass the list in, and I'm gonna pass the list out by adding add an item to it. That's how I'm gonna modify the data. So let me do this here. So my original list, if I select it, will be not that. It will be current account list. Okay, switch my type, add to end. New item will be build data. Same thing again. I'll find email. Map in email from my form. Okay, This comes out as new list. That's great. I'm going to edit this, and this is going to be called, I'm going to change the name to updated account list. Leave the type as account, but set the type to list. And okay, original list is current account list. I'm going to change this from rename to change value current account list. And I'm going to pass current account list out of my flow here. All right, and I'm going to go and save this. So now, when I come back into my form, what I'm going to do here is click update input. So current account list, I'm going to change this from form input data to form component. And I'm going to get this from the account list data repeater. And then I'm going to, I think, steal this data name, come back to my sub-dialog. I'll walk back through this in detail here. I just want to see if I can get this to work. Change that data name to account list and click OK. All right, I think this is right. Let's save this. Let's try to run it and see if I'm successful. And I'll go back through this. All right, so here's my, I gotta map my stuff in. So account list is gonna be select from flow entity results, and I'm going to ignore selected row and debug this again. So I should have a couple rows here, okay. If I click add new item, it'll pop up my form, and I can click ASDF, and there's ASDF at the bottom there. Okay, great. So we know it works. Let's talk back through what we just did here in a more reasonable. So I didn't use add item, the data repeater under user control add button, because this doesn't give you any control over the UI. It just puts a new item in the list, right? And then it's up to you to edit that item or to do it. So what I did is I leveraged the fact that sub-dialog flows allow me to show forms over top of forms. So you're going to have like a data-rich form pop up over this, right? And your user's going to enter in the new information for the new line item. And what I can do is using a little bit of trickery, like I have a data repeater. It has a data name called account list. So I can pass, the workflow passes account list into my data repeater. And then I can say, I can have the sub-dialog button. If its type is form component, it'll give me a filtered list of the things that, of any account lists, right? Because this thing is looking for an account list. And so what I can do is I can select any of the account list form components and say, get your value, get your input value from this form component. So now the flow passes in the list to my form into the data repeater, and the data repeater passes its list into the sub-dialog flow. So now I've created that data mapping relationship.
What is the difference between form component and the other one, the form input data?
Yeah. Imagine what happens. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. When we create a form component, we name it here, account list. And if we look at that input, you'll see there's an input called account list. So a normal form component, unless it has a special behavior, shows up as an input to the form so that values can be mapped to it, right? And so with the sub-dialog or even our data flows, if I wanted to pass a value straight into this thing, I could call this, QWERTY, right? And if I save this and come back to my flow, I'll have a new input that is mappable from my flow called QWERTY. So I can pass values straight from the flow into the sub-dialog flow's input if I have that requirement or if I have that need. So it allows you to interact with that input to that form component as if it's an input to the form itself, pass it straight through. But what I'm doing is leveraging this other view to say, I don't want to pass in data from the flow. I want to get data from what's on the form already. So what I then get is a drop-down list of available form components filtered by data type. And then what I know is because this thing has a data name called account list, I can, with a little bit of trickery, I get inputs and output data. And if you look, I have a change data outcome path. And what I did is I passed in the list, I added an item to that list, and then I passed that updated list out. And as long as the output data and the input data of my data repeater, right? As long as this output name and that name are exactly the same, the workflow engine will refresh that data on your behalf and give you that updated data on the main form.
I think I understand.
Yeah, so it's a little weird. It's kind of in the weeds for how we do things, but this is how you get the behavior you're after. And of course, we'll post it on YouTube so you can watch that terribly fast piece on.
Yeah, and play it in 33 RPM.
Right, yeah, sorry. But I just want to make sure I could get this working. I thought I was going to get it wrong the first try like I normally do. So
no problem. Thank
hopefully
you
that helps you.
Yes, it does, indeed.
Yeah, absolutely happy to help. All right, got four minutes left. Anybody else got any questions? Carlos or Yuritsa? Okay, nothing. If there is something, please use the raise your hand feature, and you don't have to type anything out. Otherwise, I think we will go ahead and call it an afternoon, at least afternoon here on the East Coast of America. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I will not see you next week. Sabrina, do we have that squared away? I just realized I didn't tell you I was taking off next week.
We will.
Let's go work on that right now. But I'll be gone next week, so I'll see you guys the week after. Thanks for everything. Have a great 4th of July or whatever. Thanks. See ya.